Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Bas and in this video I'm going to show you how I knit a colorful striped hat on a single bed knitting machine. The machine I'm going to use to show you is this knitting machine. This is my Singer Solo knitting machine. It is a simple plastic flatbed knitting machine. It is a single bed knitting machine and it has a needle spacing of 9 millimeters, which makes it suitable for using the thicker yarns most hand knitters use. And that's why it's also called a hand knitting machine. Let me show you how I do it. Okay, so I want to knit a hat, and a hat looks like this with ribbing. I'm going to make a pom-pom and I want to make stripes. Okay, so how is a hat like this knitted? On a flatbed knitting machine with a single bed, you usually only knit flat pieces of fabric. So a hat is constructed as a flat rectangle with ribbing. That's it. Easy peasy. Okay, the size I want to use for my hat is 56 centimeters and I want my hat to be 22 centimeters high. I want my ribbing to be 6 centimeters high, and that means 22 min 6 centimeters is 16 centimeters for the rest of the hat. And for the hat I'm going to knit a mock rib. And a mock rib isn't real rib and it's a double folded fabric. So for the 6 centimeter hem I need to knit 12 centimeter. The yarn I'm going to use is a basic acrylic yarn. It is a ball of 100 grams and it has 241 meters on a ball. And I also have some thinner leftover yarn that I'm going to use for the cast on. My hat will be made out of 3 colors and I'm going to start with the blue and then alternate the colors up until the end. And with this yarn I have already did some test swatches, so these are different colors but it's all the same yarn. And I experimented with different stitch sizes. And then I said, okay, this is the stitch size I like, this is the stitch size I'm going to use. And in this case, that's a stitch size 7. I have also experimented with the striping and the colors, and I have experimented with the mock rib. So I have chosen a stitch size of 7. And with a stitch size of 7 on my machine and with this yarn, I got a gauge of 16 stitches and 26 rows for a 10 by 10 centimeter square. And I have also measured my ribbing on a stitch size 5. And the gauge for my ribbing is 16 stitches by 32 rows on a 10 by 10 centimeter square. So with this gauge I can calculate the number of needles I need to set up and the number of rows I need to knit my hat. So for 56 centimeters I'm going to set up approximately 90 stitches. For the mock rib I'm going to knit 38 rows and for the rest of the hat I'm going to knit 42 rows. Let's get started. First I'm going to wind my balls of yarn into yarn cakes with a ball winder. One, two, three. My yarn cakes are done. Now, let's start with some knitting. I'm going to do a cast on with waste yarn first. I'm going to select 90 needles, which means 45 needles on the left side of 0 and 45 needles on the right side of 0. And I'm placing these needles into knitting position number 2. I'm checking that all my latches are open, and if the latches are not open, I am opening them now. I am going to extend my cast on comb so it is as wide as 90 stitches. And in this case, that's almost the entire needle bed. I'm going to hook the cast on comb over my needles and click it into the machine. I'm going to take my waste yarn and place it on the floor. I hook my yarn in the yarn stopper on the right side of the machine. I'm going to set my stitch size to 3 and the needle selector switch is pressed in position 1. I'm going to lay my yarn into the needle hooks and I take my carriage across from right to left. Now all needles have switched to position 1. I can release my cast on comb and let it hang freely. Now I need to bring my needles out into knitting position 2 again. So I'm going to pass the carriage again in needle position 1. So all my needles stay in needle position 1. Now I'm going to press my needle selector switch to position 2. Take my carriage across. And all needles come out to needle position 2. I'm checking again that my latches are all open. I lay in my yarn and I knit about 3, 4, 5 rows of waste yarn, what you prefer. The final row of waste yarn I'm going to knit in the stitch size that I'm going to use for my project, in this case 7. I lay in my yarn and I take my carriage across for the final pass. I'm going to release the waste yarn from the yarn stopper on the right. Now I take my main yarn and I place it on the floor. Hook it in the needle stopper on the right side of the machine. Lay in my yarn in the needle hooks, take my carriage across from right to left, press needle position to position 1, lay in my yarn from left to right. Okay, so now I have started 2 rows in main yarn and I'm going to do a mock rib. So for a mock rib I'm going to transfer every other needle over. So I'm going to take this needle and transfer it to the next. And I do it for all needles. And on the left side I'm going to have 2 needles next to each other and I'm going to leave it like that because I'm going to use the leftmost needle for sewing the seam later. So I'm not spacing these out. And now I want to start knitting my mock rib. So I need to bring my needles out to needle position 2 again so I can lay in my yarn. So I'm leaving my needle selector switch in position 1. Carriage across, nothing happens. Needle position 2, and all my needles have come out to needle position 2 so I can lay in my yarn. And now I'm going to knit 38 rows of mock rib. So I'm going to reset my row counter to 0 and I'm going to decrease my stitch size from 7 to 5. And I'm going to add some edge weights. And every so often moving up my edge weights. Okay, I'm at row 37, so I have 1 more row left. So I'm going to press my needle selector switch into position 1. So my needles will fall back to position 1 to make it easier to hang the mock rib. Now I have added 38 rows for my mock rib. So I'm going to add all the needles in between back into work. Going to remove my edge weights. I'm going to take my transfer tool And I'm going to hang all these stitches onto these needles. So 90 stitches onto 90 needles. And I'm going to start on the right side. So I'm going to look for the rightmost stitch. And that is this stitch. And I'm going to hang it on the rightmost needle. Same on the left side. The leftmost stitch is this stitch. And I'm going to hang it on the leftmost needle. And now I'm going to hang all my live stitches onto these needles. The second stitch onto the second needle, third stitch onto the third needle, and so on. So now all my stitches are hung on all my needles. So now I need to bring forward again all my needles into knitting position 2 so I can lay in my yarn to continue knitting. Take my carriage across still in knitting position 1. Switch to needle position 2. All my needles have come forward and I can continue knitting. And now I'm going to increase my stitch size, 2 whole numbers, to 7 for my main yarn. And now I'm going to start knitting my stripes. So I'm going to switch colors every 4 rows. I'm placing it all on the floor. And I'm starting with yellow. I'm going to reset my row counter to 0. And now I'm going to knit 42 rows for the rest of the head. And like I said, changing colors every 4 rows. And the last 2 rows I want to knit half as many stitches to make gathering of the crown easier. Half as many stitches makes it less bulky. So this means I'm going to knit up until row 40, half out the stitches and then knit the final 2 rows. I'm going to hook my yellow yarn in the yarn stopper on the right, lay in the yarn and take my carriage across. Okay, so I just knitted row 39, carriage is on the left, so I'm going to knit row 40, but for row 40 I'm going to press the needle selection switch to 1, so my needles will go back to position 1 to make it easier to half out the stitches for the last 2 rows. All needles back to needle position 1, I'm taking my transfer tool and I'm halving out all the stitches. So I'm going to do the same as I did for the mock rib, just transferring every other needle to the next. You don't have to, but if you want, you can decrease your stitch size for the last 2 rows. I'm going to decrease to 5, and this makes the stitches just a tiny bit tighter for less bulk. And now I'm going to bring out my needles forward again into needle position 2. Needles have come forward to needle position 2, checking that the needle latches are open. And now I'm going to knit my final 2 rows. Lay in the yarn, row number 1, and for the final row I'm going to press needle selector switch to 1. This makes gathering easier. Okay, so all my knitting is done. So now I'm going to take my work from the machine. So I'm going to take a decent amount, cut it, thread the needle, and now I'm going to thread all the stitches onto my needle. And here is my knitting. I'm going to release my knitting from the cast-on comb. So this is the back side. I'm going to remove the waste yarn. And this is what our knitting looks like. So now I'm going to gather the crown and sew up the side seam. And here is our hat. So now I'm going to make a pom-pom. So I have a pom-pom maker, and all I'm going to do is wrap the yarn around the pom-pom maker. Now I'm going to cut all the yarn strands in half. Now I take a piece of thread and I wrap it around the center of the pom-pom. I pull it as tight as possible and I tie a knot. Pom-pom finished, sew it on top of the head. And here is our finished hat. And here is the finished hat. It fits nice and snugly around my head. It has colorful stripes. It's a fun, colorful hat. I like it. I hope you do too. Of course, you can knit it in any color you like. You can change up the colors of the stripes. You can knit it in one color. You can omit the pom-pom. You can do whatever you like. That's the great thing about knitting the things yourself. I hope you liked watching this video. If you did, please leave a like on the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. It all helps out the channel a lot. Thanks. I wish you happy knitting and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.